Let's formally kick off this session. I'm Tang. Together with me, Sean will be presenting the art of captivating your audience through cartographic design. The times is changing rapidly. To be honest, our industry feels impossible to keep up with. But this is not just in GIS industry. The technology is constantly evolving. The way people consume the data as data consumer is unlike before. So with all these advanced and shiny new things, we tend to forget the basics. All these simple things is what I want to talk about, on how to create really appealing maps and making sure we are getting the right message across, and lastly, remembering our audience. As mentioned earlier, we'll be doing some stretching. I will be showing a series of maps, but just for a second. And if the maps appeal you, you can just stretch your arm like this. And if it doesn't, just do like this. No, it's just kidding. You can just stretch like this. I'm not going to break someone's bones today. So are you ready? Okay, so let's start. So I should have warned you previously, there is no right or wrong answer. You have rights to show your expression. So the next one. Okay, yeah. This one. Okay, the next one is pretty popular. Yeah. So I do have point for this, because first impression actually matters. Because we as a human being are judgmental. We like to judge what we see. So whether is it a mobile application or web mapping, we don't want to scare our audience away. So let's make sure that they love it when at the moment they look at it. So let's start with who is our so basically our audience is the who. For any kind of work that we try to produce, we should never forget our audience. It sounds so obvious, but I'm not teaching you anything new. This is just the basic. But time and time again, people tend to forget our audience. And I've seen examples where the audience is being forgotten. Not in just mapping industry, but it's also happened in everyday things. I'm sure that we face countless of examples where us as a consumer being frustrated with the user interface or user experience and being unable to attain the information that we want. So this is a universal problem that we can relate to. And treat your user as a goldfish. I'm sure you have heard that officially we have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. So goldfish has 8 seconds, and we have much less than that. And it's getting shorter and shorter. So make use of this short time span to grab their attention. And our audience like to talk, so I'm sure you guys talk a lot, mixing well with others participants today. And we definitely talk about bad things. We talk about this system is slow, it's laggy. But do keep in mind, we also talk about good things. So think about how your works can be a positive dinner conversation. And we have access to information like 24/7. The moment we got up from bed, we are connected on our phone. And our audience know what they want. They want the answer like just now. So keep in mind that people, including yourself, we don't go to simply an organization website, just we don't have anything better to do. We just go there for a browse. We go there with a specific agenda. We want to have our questions answered. So let's talk about the importance of UI and user experience. So we don't want our user to be frightened away from our solution. We want them to find their answers quickly. We want them to leave the feel of satisfaction. For the example above here is the self-service train tickets in Japan and in London. It's not really related to map, but I want to emphasize that it's a self-serve. Your map application do serve as a self-serve solution. We don't really guide through our user on how to use it. Just keep it in mind that in both cases, I literally shocked that when I saw the screen, I didn't know what should I click, whether is it a off-peak or is it a on-peak season. So we try to minimize the user experience so that people look at it, they know how to use it. And it's a common mistake where people think that cartography must come first, then the user experience come much later. But in fact, they are inseparable. They come hands in hand. Okay. To show that what I've mentioned, Sean will be showcasing several tips and tricks when it comes to putting it together on a map. Let's welcome Sean.
Thank you, Tang. Good afternoon. So let me jump right in to show you what I mean. The map here shows the planning area of Singapore. And it also contains information about the population by age group in each planning area. By the way, I am using ArcGIS Online. And ArcGIS Online has this feature called Smart Mapping. What it does is that when I select an attribute to show, it will choose what it thinks is a good way to present the data. So now I can look at this map and say, oh, now the map is telling me a little bit more. But the map doesn't look very appealing, does it? Choosing a base map is very important. It is important to choose a base map that helps emphasize your data. The aerial base map, although many people like to use it, it is useful in cases where our data has relation with the terrain. But in this case, not so. The aerial base map actually just adds to the clutter and draws the audience attention away from what really matters. ArcGIS Online offers a range of base maps for you to choose from. In this case, I will choose the simple light gray base map. What it does is that it draws the attention to only the data that really matters. But I don't really like the color, so I'm going to change it to something simpler. Let's just go with blue. Transparency. Transparency is something that many people do not make use of. We can set the transparency by attributes values. And again, we will select the age between 0 to 4, which is what we are interested in. And we can set the lower values to be transparent. So we only focus on the areas with a high population of toddlers. So now, in one glance, we can look at this map, and you can tell which are the areas with a higher population of toddlers. The darker the shade of blue, the more toddlers there are. Now we have a very nice and simple base map that you can tell in one glance what you're trying to convey to the audience. But let's take this one step further. Let's say I am from MOE, and I'm interested in the number of preschools in each planning area. what I can do is that I can plot all the preschools in Singapore as such. But just by looking at this map, I'm not able to make a decision whether or not to build more preschools and where am I to build more preschools if necessary. So instead, what I can do is to add another attribute. And smart mapping will go off and do its thing again and find a good way to present this data. Let me make some minor adjustments to make it a bit better. So now I can look at this area and I can tell two things. The number of toddlers in each area and also the number of preschools. The darker the shade of blue, the more toddlers there are, and the bigger the size of the circle, the more preschools there are. But for the case that I was talking about, if I were from MOE and I wanted to build more preschools, would I be able to tell where to build? No. So what I'm going to do is to invert the size of the circle. So that means the bigger the circle, the lesser preschools there are in the area, and the smaller the circle, the more preschools there are in the area. So if I'm looking for areas to build, I'm supposed to look for a bigger circle now after I click this. So after doing this, is there any one point that stands out to you? No? I would say this is the most obvious that is in need of attention. Pongo. Okay, so this is the importance of the user experience. You need to be able to convey your message to the audience. So I want you to remember that not all your data is interesting. So you need to focus on your message that you want to get out to your audience. So now, Tang will give you more tips on making. Now Tang will give you more tips on making better maps. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean, for the amazing demo. Letting us know how we design the map depending on what story that we want to tell. Let's walk through some tips and tricks. So the first thing is try to be focused. The best map do one thing really well. Try to find out what is the point of creating the map or the application. Are you trying to answer a question? Or are you trying to convince your stakeholder to make a decision? Or are you trying to tell a story? Do not forget your message or purpose. Decide that one thing and do it really, really well. For example, this web application is showing where all the capital works that is ongoing. And the other examples is allow me to locate the nearest, where is the nearest hospital, libraries, or even community centers. The second step is to start simple, then simplify. There's a saying that less is more. Do not include anything by default, and when it doesn't align with the purpose and message of your story. Try to question on everything that you're trying to do. For example, do you really need the aerial base map? If it just clutter the map, just choose a one with a simple color. Do you really need the tool? If so, why? Does the tool really help on the purpose? Does the user really need that tool in order to perform some analysis? Question everything and just don't put everything on default. And we need to know like how our map will be viewed. And in this case, I'm not trying to say a static map versus a dynamic map. Now we think on the device that's going to access your web map. And we can try to think mobile first. It's not compulsory, but it's a worth case to consider. And just so you know, if you are using Esri Web App Builder, there is a preview option that allows you to see how the maps appears on a mobile devices. So you can just preview that before publishing it. Likewise, story maps, they are having responsive layouts. They are designed to be viewed on the mobile as well. And next is to draw your audience in. Limit the use of the color where possible. We don't want people to spend 10 minutes to figure out this color, is it related to that legend. Think about the color you choose and what is the base map that you are using. These are the examples of dark base map, and they use light color to bring out the story. Combining the layers with bright colors and dark base map, the layers really stand out. And personally, I like this firefly cartography the most, where it really leveraging this contrast to make appealing maps. Here are the other few examples of using bright colors on a dark color base map. And to emphasize that if you are using a dark color base map, the light color is the most contrast. Whereas if you are using a light base map, the darker color will be most contrast. Just be careful. For example, this one is trying to emphasize the calorie consumption, but then we tend to attract to the lighter color, which it defeats the purpose here. And do we reach everyone? Because for color blindness, it appears more dominant in male, where for a color blindness people, they will see something like this instead of the one above. And if you are using smart mapping in ArcGIS, the color palette that is chosen is already considered as blind safe. And there are other online tools available, such as Color Brewer, that helps you to choose the color so that we can reach a wider proportion of our audience. And as mentioned by Sean, this is the way where we use the transparency to bring away those lower value and really highlighting the message. And the eye is going to be drawn somewhere on the map is the way we control where it will be like. So we can control in such a way that to allow the user to focus on the important matter and not the others. And lastly, show mom or dad. Show to a non-GIS professional. See whether is it self-explanatory. And just a few tips that I'm sure you already know, but I want to remind you them and dig them back out of your memories. Let's make map that people love and the people want to talk about in a good way, that people find it useful. And for the solution mix, we are using ArcGIS Online platform for the demo earlier, and the data is freely available at data.gov. And for more resources, you can visit ArcGIS Story Map Gallery. Inform and engage your audience with story maps is a freely available training available, and the Esri MOC training as well. And for in-house training, we have designing maps with using ArcGIS, creating story map with ArcGIS, and there are a lot of options to choose. And you can simply visit esrisingapore.com.sg/training to find out more. I think we have some time left for questions. Do you guys have any questions?
Okay, I have a question. Tang.
Okay.
Okay. If what is your favorite way to display and visualize large quantities of data on your map? You know, there are so many different ways. There are like heat maps and cluster maps and
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So I will bring up the demo earlier. So let's say we have all these points. So there are many ways to do that. So first, the one which is popular, we can just select like heat map, just to bring out where's the concentration be. But sometimes we can just use a simpler option, and this feature is newly available, where you can create clustering. So in here, you can just, oops. Okay, sorry. So, sorry about that. So let me show you on the heat map. So for this, we can simply just bring out where is the concentration. This is really a popular choice. But sometimes we just want to show a bubble which is the bigger cluster. And in ArcGIS Online, there's a new enhancement where you can just enable the clustering, and it just help you to aggregate the points around the area. And as you zoom it in, it will be based on the extent. And personally, this is like a long requested feature that everybody wants, and it's finally available here.
All right. Thank you, Tang.
Okay.
Okay. Now I know a few things about displaying different quantities of map data on my maps. Okay.
Okay. Thank
All right. So thank you, Tang and Sean.